Hey, this is Riley, host of the Superhuman podcast. At Superhuman, we interview health experts and show other high performers and teach our community how to optimize their health, supercharge their performance, and unlock their biological code so they can do more with less. If you want to fix annoying health issues slowing you down, become a productivity machine, have genius ideas pop into your mind, stop feeling so stressed, build better relationships, and generate more income, optimizing your inner machinery can do just that. Visit www.getsuperhuman.io to learn more. My guest today is Dr. Michael Breus. Dr. Breus, widely known as the Sleep Doctor, is a clinical psychologist, a diplomat of the American Board of Sleep Medicine, and a fellow of the American Academy of Sleep Medicine. He's one of the world's leading authorities in sleep and author of multiple best-selling books, including The Power of When, frequently guests on shows like Dr. Oz, The Today Show, and Oprah. With decades of experience helping people optimize their sleep for better health, performance, and overall vitality, as well as his new book, Sleep, Drink, Breathe, Dr. Breus is here to share his groundbreaking insights on how you too can harness the power of sleep and become your superhuman best. Dr. Breus, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Riley. I'm stoked to be here.
Yeah, it's really an honor to have you on. I personally know how important sleep is, going through my own journey about 12 years ago with autoimmune disease and how much sleep really contributed to all that. But I'm really curious in, your origin story, where it all started. What inspired you to become the sleep doctor and kind of draw you in to the science of sleep?
Well, if I'm being honest, it was completely serendipitous. I had no idea I was going to become a sleep doctor, much less the sleep doctor. So I was so I have a PhD in clinical psychology. I was doing a residency program, much like an MD does. You go out into the field for a year and you work with like a mentor, and you might work at a hospital, you might work at a center, all these different things, just to kind of get your clinical skills sort of going. And I was really interested in sports psychology of all things. So I was at the University of Georgia, and they have a great Division I sports department. And I got a chance to do some sports psychology with some of the athletes there. And I figured, hey, why don't I do a residency in this same area? But if I'm being honest with you, Riley, I couldn't get into the residency that I wanted to. It was the #1 sports psychology residency in the country. And only the Harvards and the Princetons and the Yales of the world got in there. I went to Georgia. It was a top 20 program, but it wasn't Harvard, right? But they had a sleep track that they were recruiting for in particular. And I had worked my way through graduate school in the electrophysiology department. So I'm that wonky weirdo kind of guy that likes to take apart machines and put them back together and make sure that they worked okay. And they used the same machines that I knew how to work in the sleep lab. So here's what I figured. I said, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to sell myself as a sleep guy. And then as soon as I get in, I'm just going to transfer, right? Because once if you're not going to let me in through the front door, bro, I'm walking in through the side,
Yeah.
So I get there first day, get involved in the sleep track, sell myself as a sleep guy, raise my hand. I said, hey, I want to transfer. They said, we had a feeling you would want to do this, Dr. Breus. So here's the deal. You're funded through the sleep laboratory, which means you have to work there for at least 6 months, and then you can do whatever else in the program that you want. I'm like, how tough can this be? It's sleep, right? I do it every night. So I get there, and by the 3rd day, Riley, I completely fell in love with clinical sleep medicine. Dude, I help people this fast. It's unbelievable. You change somebody's sleep and you change their life. When I'm studying clinical psychology, it could take weeks, months, even years before you see any level of treatment gains with your patient population. Dude, I change people's lives on the regular. It's so much fun. Sleep affects every organ system and every disease state. Literally everything that you do better with a good night's sleep. And so I love the idea of being on Superhuman because I think sleep could be a superpower for people. I think if you can, let me put it to you this way. If you ain't sleeping, you're probably not feeling too super.
Yeah, you're not feeling too super for sure. And, the turnaround you probably saw with people fixing their sleep, compared to other, professions in different areas of medicine, you see that turnaround so quickly, right?
Oh, yeah. And I mean, it's interesting. Like sometimes you might notice something, you say, you know what, I think this person has undiagnosed sleep apnea. Then you get them tested in under 24 hours and you can have them on treatment in another 24 hours. Maybe you notice, some symptomatology and you say, holy cow, this person might have narcolepsy. Well, we get them to a neurologist, we get different types of prescriptions filled, and we might be able to literally change their life that quickly. And
Wow.
also, I will tell you that when I started in this, which was 26 years ago, believe it or not, um, it was very different. It took a long time to help people. Like you'd have to get them into a sleep lab, and sometimes that was a 3 or 4 month wait just to get
Hmm.
into the lab because there weren't that many sleep labs back then. Good news,
Sure.
since COVID, dude, everything has sped up. Now
Yeah.
we almost never do studies in the lab anymore. It's almost now all
Uh,
home studies. And we can
huh.
send people things like a ring or a watch or a wristband, and we can measure their sleep in their home, in their bed overnight. Then that information dumps over. I'm not sure how, I'm not the most technical guy, to your phone, and it goes up to the cloud. And before you know it, we've got doctors out there who can read these studies and do
Yeah.
telemedicine with somebody. And that process that could take 7 or 8 weeks, it's down to 3 days. Like
Three
it's kind of
days.
remarkable.
Wow. Yeah, I've always wondered when people do those sleep studies, polysomnographs, and
Uh,
they're sitting with wires connected to them, and the nurse comes to wake them up. I've always wondered how close is that to them being comfortable in their own environment, their safe haven within their beds,
it's
when
a
we can
great
actually do it.
question.
Yeah,
Here's what it matters is, it matters what you're trying to figure out. Like it matters what you're trying to diagnose. So for
got
example,
it.
with sleep apnea, these people are so damn tired, they'll fall asleep anywhere. Honestly, they'll
Oh, I
fall
see.
asleep anywhere, right?
That actually makes sense.
Insomnia
Yeah.
never works, right? Like
Mm.
if you don't sleep well and I stick 27 electrodes on you, put 2 respiratory belts on you, have a camera looking at you all night long, you're really not going to sleep well. I can
Yeah, you're
assure you
not
of
going to
that.
sleep.
So you have to pick and choose the type of patient that would work best in that environment. And I feel
Mm.
like sleep apnea was a good one. Restless leg syndrome was a good one, even narcolepsy. But when you start to talk about insomnia and those variants, it really never worked out very well. Now, all I have to do is stick a ring on somebody. Like
Mhm.
everything gets a lot easier, a lot quicker.
Yeah, no kidding. And I guess for people who are not able to sleep well, how is that actually impacting them mentally and physically? I think
Oh,
people know subjectively what it feels like. Could you dive into that a little bit?
absolutely. So there's a whole host of different things that happen when you don't sleep well. And there's biology and there's psychology behind it, right? So
Mm.
biologically speaking, holy cow. I mean, it's everything from you have lowered heart rate variability, you have higher reaction time, your immune system doesn't work as well. I mean, literally every single organ system doesn't do well with poor sleep. Your digestion is
Mm.
off, your microbiome is off, like all the things that people are starting to look at these days. Like none of it's going to work if you're not sleeping. So sleep has a
Mm.
big impact physically, but also I don't want to downgrade the mental aspects of getting poor sleep.
Mm.
It really beats people up. Number one, if you've got depression, your depression is now a hell of a lot worse if you're not
Mm.
sleeping. If you've got anxiety, you're more anxious when you're not sleeping. It feels like without sleep, everything seems to accentuate or
Mhm.
grow in that area. And you could even look at it spiritually. I mean, I'm not going to get all woo woo spiritual on you, but at the end of the day, if you're not sleeping well, like how do you have a relationship with any type of higher power being, whatever you want to call it, right? Like it's
Yeah.
very difficult to do. So I would argue that sleep is, I mean, the reason I wrote the new book, Sleep, Drink, Breathe, is because I feel like it's a fundamental thing of health.
Mhm.
Like it's almost like the DNA of health. So I have
Yeah.
sleep, then I have hydration, which is the drink, and then breathe, which is breath work. And I figure if you can get those three things down and do them fairly decently, like everything
Mhm.
else is gravy on the taters, you know?
Yeah, it all sort of falls into place. It's a nice little triangle model to go from. I love that. It's so simple, and if you're confused and you don't know what to do, just go back to that.
Well,
What do you
and
think
that's
are
the
the
whole reason I
Sorry,
wrote
go
the
ahead.
book actually, was because so many people, like, they don't know where to start in their wellness journey,
Mhm.
right? Like they're looking around and they're like, oh, do I get a green drink? Do I do a sauna? Do I do a cold plunge? Do I spend a lot of money? Do I go to a doctor, blood work? You don't have to
Mm.
do any of that shit. Okay.
Yeah.
You just need to
Yeah.
sleep. You need to
Yeah.
hydrate and you need to breathe. And I think it's a great place to kind of start your wellness journey for folks out there who are confused. Or let's say you're already down the wellness path and you're already in the sauna and you're already having your green drink or whatever, and you're having a
Mm.
good time with it. I can assure you that anything that you're doing, if you're not sleeping well, if you're not well
Mm.
hydrated, and you don't understand breathing and breath work, it's not going to do as much good as it could.
Yeah, absolutely. And people just see that play out in their personal and business lives. And I think if you were to break it down. It's like people sometimes ask me, what's most important, sleep, diet, or exercise? And I think they're all important, but I think if you were to stack them on a triangle, sleep has to be that foundation. Because I know
I
people
got to
who
be
sleep
honest with
well.
you,
Yeah,
dude.
sure.
Sleep is at the top of the heap every single time.
Yeah,
Let me
yeah.
explain. In my second book, I wrote a book called The Sleep Doctor's Diet: Lose Weight Through Better Sleep. We actually
Uh,
know and understand a tremendous amount about how your body utilizes food based on how well you sleep. Let me give you a couple of
Interesting.
examples, right? So when you're sleep deprived, and let's be clear here, sleep deprivation is different for everyone, right? And we're not just talking about minutes here, we're talking about quality as well. Okay. So you could get 9 hours of really shitty sleep and it's not going to do you any good, right? Or you could get
Hmm.
6 hours of amazing sleep and it could do you a whole lot of good, right? So once we understand, and by the way, that definition is personal. So what sleep deprivation for Riley is going to be different than sleep deprivation for Michael, right? But
Hmm.
but let's say you kind of know what that is, because most people can kind of feel it, right?
Hmm.
Here's what happens from a metabolic standpoint. As soon as you start to become sleep deprived, your body, your appetite increases and your metabolism slows down. The reasoning is your brain is saying, I'm not really sure why I'm awake, but I need to conserve the resources in my body. So I'm going to slow down my
Hmm.
metabolism and I'm going to increase my appetite. So I'm going to go look for more food, right? So that's two things
Interesting.
hormonally that happen almost on the immediate. Then your hormones get really messed up. Two in particular are very well affected, and this is all in the scientific literature, is something called leptin and another thing called ghrelin.
Hmm.
Ghrelin is the hunger hormone. By the way, hunger and appetite are two different things in the brain, but it's up by about 20%. And leptin is a hormone that makes you feel full, or the hormone of satiety. That's down by about 15%. So
Wow.
think about it like so, right? So your appetite is high, your hunger is high, your metabolism is low, and you don't feel full. If that is
Yeah.
not a recipe for weight gain, you know, I don't know what is, right? And so when people are out
Yeah.
there dieting, one of the things I've very on the regular told them is like, if you're not sleeping well, there isn't a diet in the universe that's going to work to its fullest potential for you. It just is. It's
Yeah.
just physiologically not going to happen, right?
Yeah.
Now let's
Really
take
non-existent.
exercise, right? Same idea set here, right? Here's what we know about exercise in particular is there are a lot of things that exercise does for us, right? So number one is recovery, right? So you have to recover from your exercise, whatever cardio, weightlifting, yoga, whatever it is you want to do. Like I'm all for exercise. I want you to do anything that you want to do. But if you don't have enough sleep, your muscles and your body and your respiration, all that have to recover from that time that you're doing that, right? And so if you don't give your body the time to recover, right, then your body is not going to perform the way in which you want it to. Now let's look at sleep before you exercise from a
Hmm.
performance standpoint, because I've worked with lots of athletes and things, people like that in the world, right? I can tell you right now that for Olympic athletes, the person who has the gold versus the person that has the bronze, it has to do with how well they slept the night before. Every
Wow.
single time. Every single time, right? Sleep is that much of a performance enhancement. Honestly, it's like the best performance enhancement drug that there possibly
Hmm.
could be if you can get good quality sleep. But a lot of people, they have this anticipatory anxiety before the match or before the game or
Sure.
things like that. And so I work with athletes to help them do some of those things. A third area within exercise that sleep is very affects highly is injury, right? If you're
Hmm.
if you're tired, you're far more likely to get injured. And like,
Hmm.
granted, many people who are your listeners might not be professional athletes, but we're all kind of, out there kind of doing our thing and trying to stay fit and trying to do that. If you get injured, like I'm 57, if you get injured at age 57 and you're out for 3 or 4 weeks, almost all of the muscular gains that you've had are gone. Like
Yeah.
they're gone. Right. And so the
Yeah.
goal when you hit my age is just don't get injured. Right. Just,
Yeah.
keep on your
Keep
treadmill,
it.
keep on your exercise bike, keep on whatever it is you're keeping on. But the goal here is to not get injured. And I think sleep really helps with that because you're more cognizant, you're more aware, your muscles are ready to do more. Sorry, long winded answer.
No, that was amazing. That answered a bunch of questions in one. One question I really that I'm interested in is when somebody has an injury, if they sleep better, can that
It heals
increase the
faster,
speed of
dude.
recovery. Is that to do with human growth hormone release during the deep sleep or something
Absolutely.
related?
There you go. Look at you. You're
Okay.
getting into the science. I love it. So, absolutely. So, in stage 3, 4 sleep, or what we call deep sleep, is where the largest bolus of human growth hormone occurs. And this is
Mm,
kind of like, I tell people it's kind of like bringing your car into the body shop and getting the dents and the scratches and the dinks pulled out. Like, that's
yeah.
what it does. Right. And so, the less deep sleep that you have, the less real recovery that you have. Now, to back up
Mhm.
for a second, a lot of people don't know this, but alcohol destroys stage 3, 4 sleep, right? Like
Huh.
it really messes it up, especially when you drink it closer and closer to bedtime. So what happens with a lot of people out there is like, oh, I'm going to have a couple of glasses of wine with dinner, blah, blah, blah. I ran a 5K today. And guess what? Their body isn't recovered the next day or even the next day
Mm,
because alcohol has been something that's kind of worked in there. There's also something else that happens during those stages of sleep that's kind of interesting. It's called the glymphatic system is turned on. So the glymphatic system is kind of like the waste management system of the brain. It's kind of like the garbage truck comes in and it pulls out all these proteins that have been accumulating in your brain. So when people are making decisions on the regular, which we all make thousands of decisions every day, a very, very tiny protein is produced after that thought pattern. Well, when those accumulate and they don't get pulled out by the garbage truck, they wrap around the cranial nerves and the brain nerves. That's called
hmm.
Alzheimer's disease. Okay.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
Right. So sleep turns out to be such an important preventative. Like if you're looking for preventative medicine, look no further than sleep, right? Because it's going to help you on the cognitive because it helps, get rid of those proteins and physiologically it helps with recovery. REM sleep is really the mental restoration, right? So REM sleep is where we move information from our short-term memory to our long-term memory. We kind of create this organizational substructure in our head, kind of like a filing cabinet to put data
Hmm.
in so that way we can retrieve it later on if we need to remember how to ride a bike or answer a question on a test or things like that. And then, by the way, there's this really weird thing that happens during REM sleep called dreams, right? So dreams are this kind of crazy, fantastical show that's going on inside your head. But what dreams really are from a physiology standpoint and more, I guess, from a psychology standpoint is dreams are emotional metabolism. Okay.
Mm,
So when you have a hyper emotional day, something happened with your spouse, something great happened at work, your kid is in the hospital, God forbid. Like when you have all those emotional types of things, where you process that is during REM sleep. Right. And when
mm,
you can't process it, when it becomes too scary, you wake up and that's called a nightmare.
yeah.
Right. So sleep is just fundamental to everything. Like I said, everything you do better with a good night's sleep.
No kidding. And along the lines of dreams, lucid dreaming. What do you
I'm a
think about
fan.
that? How do we hack into that? I've heard people can take alpha GPC. Is there different ways that we
Oh,
can
yeah.
get into
So
the lucid dreaming
absolutely
states?
happy to talk about that. So I actually worked on a project where we had a unit that you could put on your head, like a
Mm,
goggles, and we could
yep.
reliably induce lucid dreams into people. And then we actually
Wow.
created a communication mechanism between us and the dreamer. You ever see that movie Inception?
Yes.
So it wasn't as good as that, but we had a very rudimentary way, but we actually could do things and communicate with the dreamer, right? And so lucid
Wow.
dreaming is a skill. It is something that you can absolutely teach yourself how to do. The father of lucid dreaming is a gentleman by the name of Dr. Stephen LaBerge, and he actually still is practicing, and he does retreats. I think he does them in Hawaii. I'm not positive, but I think he might. And you can go to these retreats and you can learn how to lucid dream. There's some courses online that I think are pretty decent with it. But I've been a lucid dreamer naturally since I was a young kid.
Wow. So some people just have an easier time with it, maybe genetically than others.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
kind of the thought process. We're not really sure why some people are better lucid dreamers than others. But again, it is a skill
Yeah.
set that most people can master.
Yeah, I mean that's incredible. I think some people see the movie Limitless and they just want to be able to tap into those states, whether awake or in those dreamlike states. So if that's a skill and you can work on, that's incredible.
Yeah, and I mean, some people will take glutathione
Mm,
before bed, and that can sometimes work. The goggles that we had, what we were doing was we had these sensors on the side, so we could measure what state you were in. And as soon as
mm,
you entered into REM sleep, we would flash these lights super duper quickly, and it kind of like brought you to consciousness and out. And all of a sudden in 15 seconds, you were lucid. Like, it was cool.
Wow. That's fascinating. It's so cool what the future holds with technology and sleep and
Oh, dude, it's
how it
crazy.
changes how we're going to operate in the world. Going to technology now, it's a huge part of our lives, and there's the bad side and there's the good side to technology. On the bad side, we have blue light. How much does screen time play in a role with sleep,
Okay.
and how can we combat this?
I want to combat the myth of blue light for just a moment
Mm.
here, okay? So here's the deal: is blue light affects you based on how much blue light you've gotten during the daytime. All right.
Mm.
So blue light isn't like, don't get me wrong. I have a patient who used to fall asleep in his theater room watching Star Wars. Okay. So like bathing in blue light, right? So the quality of his sleep might not have been too great. But on the
Mm.
general, when we're talking about most people, it really doesn't have that big of an effect. But what does have an effect is your engagement level. Right. So
Mm.
basically, if you're trying to get your high score on Candy Crush on your phone, you ain't trying to go
Mm.
to bed. Right. And so
No.
right. And so is the blue light affecting you? It is, but like that's like 1%, 2% of what's going on. But if you're engaging
Okay.
in something, that's really where you're having the issue. The metric
Got it.
that I think people are not aware of, that I think we should tell them about, is it really has a lot to do with heart rate. So it's
Mm.
almost impossible to enter into a state of unconsciousness with a heart rate above 60. Now, don't get me wrong. There are
Interesting.
people out there with high blood pressure, and their heart rate might never get to there, but their body adapts to that. But for general folks out there, you have to get your heart rate lower. And like, if you're reading Facebook posts and reading emails, from your friends and family, your heart rate is not at 60. And
Mm.
really, that's really the goal set. Like, and look, I'm the only sleep doctor in the universe that says it's okay to fall asleep with the television on. Yes, you heard
Mm.
it here on Superhuman, folks. You can definitely fall asleep with the television on. And the reason why I
People like
believe
that.
in this is because my wife does it every single night. In my
Hmm.
house, dude, we have a big screen TV. It's on all night long, because that's how she's able to sleep. I wear an eye mask.
Sure.
And you know what? It doesn't bother me at all. Right. We have two
Huh.
French bulldogs that sleep in the bed with us. Okay. And I'm the
Yep.
sleep doctor, for God's sakes. Right. So, like, what I try to tell people is sleep is flexible. Okay.
Mm.
Like, you don't have to think about these hard and fast rules all the time. And, this whole idea of sleep optimization, like, I'm going to make my sleep as optimal as it can be. Look, I can teach people how to make their sleep of higher quality, and I can teach people how to get longer quantity if that's something that they're interested in. But I don't believe there is such a thing as true sleep optimization, because your sleep is going to change throughout the day, throughout the night, throughout the week, throughout the month, right? That's just kind of how sleep is.
Mm. Interesting. So that's really fascinating because everybody talks about blue light and how much it lowers melatonin, but it
It does
seems
all
like
those
that.
things. I want to be very, very clear. It does all of those things, but the
Yeah.
amount of an effect that it has on an
Right.
individual is
Is
really
less.
minimal compared to if you just did 4-7-8 breathing and brought your heart rate down below 60, you'd fall
Yeah.
right to sleep. And you could be right in front of a TV
Wow.
when you do it.
So many people are taking a sigh of relief right now because so many people are like, the only way I can fall asleep is with something happening in the background or going on my phone, and they don't want to live
Yeah.
these rigid lifestyles. So no, that's
Yeah.
really good to people can definitely
So
try the
here's
forced and
so
breathing.
I want to double tap on something here, if you don't mind, because I think this is an
Yeah.
important point. Is you have probably been getting information or reading from people that call themselves sleep experts, right? People who say blue light is bad before bed because it does this with melatonin and things like that. There's a very big difference between a sleep expert and a sleep doctor. Okay.
Mm.
I am a sleep doctor. Sleep experts study sleep. I fix it. Right.
Mm.
So remember, what happens in the laboratory is super duper interesting. And we love the lab because we learn so much from it. But when you take that and you put it into the field and you really pressure test it, you start to learn what really works and what really doesn't.
Sure.
So a lot of people out there may be listening to or reading books from people who are calling themselves sleep experts. And I want to be clear, they are experts, but they're biased, right? They research a topic, they learn all about it, and then they create this prevailing theory about that. They have no idea what happens in the real world or all the other many things that can go on, right? My job is I take everybody's research. I've got no bias. My goal is just get my patients to fall asleep quicker if that's what they want, or have higher quality if that's what they want. And I think people have to really think about, where am I getting my information from, right? Is
Mhm.
it a sleep expert or is it a sleep doctor? I think those are two very different things.
I think you're right. And we have to be very careful because there's so much contradicting information out there and people just don't know where to go to. They're just seeing the top 10 tips, that they
Yeah.
see online
And
from some guru somewhere.
yeah, and I think that's what's important, is know where you're getting your information from, like vet your
Mhm.
information. And I want to be clear, like the sleep doctors out there, like Dr. Matthew Walker, Dr. Andrew Huberman, like they're smart guys. And there's some wonderful female sleep researchers. Like it's amazing some of the research that comes out. Quite frankly, that's one of the reasons I like the field so much, is because I learned something new. Like I was reading a study just before I came on your show about a group that uses a scent, an olfactory scent, to get rid of sleep apnea, right?
Hmm.
Like I've never even heard of something like that before. So
Wow.
now my mind is kind of turning like, gee, I wonder how that could work in the field. I wonder what we could do with that. What
Yeah.
happens if somebody's got congestion or a stuffy nose? Like what happens
No
if you're
kidding.
allergic to the scent? Like I've got all these questions, whereas the research would show, hey, they gave 17 people this scent and their sleep apnea index went down. That's great. But now if I try to put that out there, it's very, very different. So people really need to be thoughtful, I think, and not just, oh, that's an expert, I'm gonna do what they say. Like, think about
Yeah.
it for a second.
What about going to the good side of technology now?
Yeah,
Sleep trackers, Oura Ring,
sure.
Whoop Band, etc. What are the most important metrics we should look at? Most people see the overall score, but what are those HRV, deep sleep, REM sleep? What do you suggest?
Absolutely. So here's what I'm going to tell you. There is almost no tracker on the market that's accurate. Almost none.
Mm.
Okay. So I'm wearing the Aura Ring. A lot of people wear a Whoop strap. Some people have the Garmin unit or an Apple Watch. So there's a lot of sleep tracking that's going on. So number one, it's not accurate. The best one out there is maybe 85% accurate to true nighttime polysomnography. So that's number one. Okay. Number two is, they're only good at telling you when you fall asleep and when you wake up. They're terrible
Mm.
at getting into the depth of sleep. Here's why. The depths of sleep is measured by EEG, or brain waves. Like, what kind
Mm.
of data can I get from my finger that I then have to use as a proxy to estimate what's going on there, right? It's very, very difficult. Here's what I will tell you, though. I think sleep trackers can be valuable, and I think certain ones are better than others. So I would argue that any tracker that's a ring is far better than almost any other tracker. Here's why.
Mm.
You can get temperature very accurately from the ring. Sleep
Mm.
follows the core body temperature cycle. So I think you have a much greater chance of having something that's pretty decent in there. That's number one. Number two, don't look at the exact data. I can't count the number of people who say to me, Michael, I wake up and I feel fantastic, and my ring says I've got a 36, and now I feel like dog shit, right? And I'm like, don't look at the ring. Like, number
Yeah.
one, look for trends. Don't look for exact pieces of data, because again, the accuracy level isn't good. The other thing that a lot of people will say to me is they'll be like, well, Michael, can you take a look at this? I got 14 minutes of deep sleep last night. I'm like, well, what'd you get the night before? I said, 14 minutes. I said, what about the night before? They said, 14 minutes. I said, you're fine. So what are you talking about? I only got 14 minutes of sleep. I'm like, no, this is being consistently inaccurate. I want to
Mm.
know what happens when you get 14 minutes and then you get 407 and you get 362. I'm more
Yeah.
interested in the delta, right? The
Got it.
derivation from the norm of what you're doing. Because these things, again, while we can't go by the precise number, we can certainly know when there's a deflection from that. And then we look back at our behaviors to see what behaviors we had that maybe made a difference there.
Interesting. And then for the deep sleep and the REM sleep specifically, are there different things we can do while we're not sleeping, while we're awake, to improve deep sleep specifically and REM sleep specifically? Or is it the same things that
Yes.
improve both deep sleep and REM at the same time?
Well, a little bit, but yes, we can definitely do things to improve them. The number one way to improve sleep quality across the board: exercise on the daily.
Hmm.
Now, I want to be clear, you don't have to run a marathon, and it doesn't necessarily even have to be cardio. But if you can get your body moving every single day, that is going to be absolutely valuable, specifically for deep sleep. That turns out to be a very good thing to do. For REM sleep, the easiest way to get more REM sleep, and this is going to sound crazy, is to wake up at the same time 7 days a week.
Hmm.
Let me explain. So when you wake up at the exact same time every single day, including Saturdays and including Sundays, so no sleeping in, what happens is when you wake up, sunlight hits your eye and you have a melanopsin cell in your eye, which sends a signal to your brain to turn off the melatonin faucet in your head. But what it also does is it sets a timer. And that timer tells you when melatonin needs to turn back on. It's called the melatonin phase response curve. It's about 14 hours, right? So follow my logic. If you're waking up at 6 o'clock in the morning, 14 hours later is 8 o'clock at night. Melatonin kicks off then. It takes about an hour and a half for it to kind of get to plasma concentration levels where you're going to start to feel sleepy. Now it's about 9:30, 10 o'clock, which is when most people are kind of wanting to fall asleep. And you then go to sleep and you end up sleeping longer, right? You go to bed earlier, you go right when your melatonin is, and you get the full sleep cycles that you want. Here's the hidden secret is REM sleep is not equally distributed across the night. You have a little bit at the beginning, and then it gets next sleep cycle is a little bit more. Next sleep cycle is a little bit more. Most people get up early, right? Because they have an irregular sleep schedule and they miss the entire last sleep cycle and they miss all the REM. That's where all the good stuff is, right? And so being able to have consistency within your sleep, and the easiest way to do that, like the number one thing to do is to wake up at the same time 7 days a week. Like if you do that for 3 or 4 weeks, I can assure you that your sleep quality is going to improve by 30, 40%, like that.
Wow. So easy. Just
Right.
that consistency. Our body, I've heard of something called the Savannah principle. Our bodies haven't changed from thousands of years ago, but our technology has. So if we can, adapt our body to be a little bit more prehistoric, then we're going in the right direction in some ways.
Yeah, I would agree with that, especially when you look at things like sleep. Like, to be honest, like Thomas Edison invented insomnia, not the light bulb, right? Because,
Yeah.
well, think about it. As soon as the light bulb came on, people could
Yeah.
be awake during the night and they could work
Sure.
more during the night. And that changes your whole output and your whole idea set of like, what is evenings? How do those work for me? What do I want to do? What do I not want to do? So yeah, being a little bit prehistoric is probably not the worst idea.
Very interesting. Now, I know you said optimizing sleep isn't the best term to use, but is it possible to improve sleep quality and the efficiency of your sleep so you can reduce your overall sleep time by 1 or 2 hours? If someone's sleeping on
Absolutely.
average, let's say 8 or 9 hours a night, can we get them down to around 6 hours?
100%. Dude, that's what I do. So let me tell you how you do it. You have to figure out something called your chronotype. So you
Mm,
might not have heard of this term, but you've actually heard of the concept before. Have you ever heard of somebody being called an early bird or a night owl?
absolutely. Yep.
Those are chronotypes. So the thing that I'm kind of the most famous for is in my third book called The Power of When, I helped people identify their chronotype. So when you know what your chronotype is and you sleep within that chronotypical swim lane, as I call it, guess what happens? You don't need as much sleep because the quality is so great. So I did
Yep.
this experiment on myself. So when I'm writing the book, when I write my books, I get really into it and I do all the all the stuff that I tell people to do, and I try it out on my wife and my kids and my friends and all that stuff. And so I'm a night owl, what I call a
Mm,
wolf. By the way, I renamed the category. So if you're an early bird,
mm,
you're now a lion. If you're a night owl, you're a wolf. If you're in the middle, you're a bear. What I'm most famous for is I discovered a fourth chronotype. I call them a dolphin. These are people who
mm,
have a very irregular sleep pattern. This is all, by the way, based on your genetics and your core body temperature changing throughout the night, which then changes your hormone structure. But
mm,
what I started doing was, since I'm a night owl, I said, well, you know what? I'm just going to go to bed at midnight every single night and see what happens for a month. So I went to bed at midnight and I slept until about 7:45. Then about 3 days goes by and now I'm not sleeping any longer than 7:15. Like my body is naturally waking me up, right? Again, this had to do with me being more consistent with my bedtime, and all of a sudden things started happening. Dude, by the
mm.
time I was done with it, my body wouldn't let me sleep longer than 6 hours and 13 minutes.
Wow.
And I was looking at, and so I looked at my sleep on because I had a device that could actually tell me what it was. It was fantastic sleep. I felt great. I didn't
Huh.
drink coffee. Like I would go to bed at midnight. I'd wake
Wow.
up at 6:15 and I'd have this much energy. Like it's nuts.
That's crazy. And then is there a way to do genetic tests to figure out what this is?
You don't have
Or
to. I mean, there
you don't
is.
have to?
So number one, you can. Like I can show you on your 23andMe or your ancestry.com. But if you go to chronoquiz.com, my website,
Okay.
it takes about 3 minutes, 5 minutes to take my quiz. I'll tell you exactly what your chronotype is within a fair degree of accuracy. We've had now almost 3 million people take the quiz. So like we've been able
Wow.
to refine it and really get in there. And we really start to understand like kind of what your chronotypical, setup is. And by the way, your chronotype changes over time. Right. So
Yeah.
think about it like this. So when you were an itty bitty baby, you were a lion, right? You went to bed early, you woke up early, kind of like what babies do. Then when you were kind of in the toddler middle schooler range, you were a bear. You went to bed around 7:30, you woke up around
Mm.
7:30, things went good, right? Adult bears go to bed around 10:30, wake up around 7:30. Then
Mhm.
what happened when you were a teenager? You became a night owl, right? You wanted to stay up until 2 and sleep until 12, right? The next day, like that's what my kids wanted to do. Once you hit about 20, 25, your chronotype seems to be expressed, right?
Mm.
Genetically speaking, and your body seems to choose one of these four. And then that's where you are for about 40 years. And then it changes again, right? So if you ever ask your parents, or better yet, your grandparents, say, hey, grandma, I want to go out to dinner tonight. What time does she want to go out to dinner? It's like 4:30 in the afternoon, right? Because
Yeah.
she's moving backwards in her chronotype and now turning into more of an early person. So it's really quite fascinating. But if you can identify where you are in this chronotype universe, it becomes really the greatest cheat code ever. Because like I can show you not just when to sleep, I can show you the best time of day to have sex, eat a cheeseburger, ask your boss for a raise. Like it's unbelievable how many studies have been done on chronotypes.
Wow. And then somebody can plan their schedule around this and
Yeah,
they'll feel
exactly.
better, have more energy. Like it's not just sleep, it goes into focus, and that extends even
Absolutely.
further. Yeah, that's amazing.
It's cool stuff.
Going a little bit, yeah, it's really fascinating. Going a little bit more advanced now in terms
Mhm.
of like more in the biohacking space, what
Yep.
excites you, whether it's red light, gadgets for the head, maybe it's advanced supplements, peptides, nootropics, anything along there that you've noticed helps really well with sleep?
I'll tell you, every once in a while, like everybody's always trying to come up with something. So first of all, let's double tap on supplements for just a half a second, since so many people want to go there. But then I want to tell you about this device called an Apollo that I really like,
Mm.
that I think is very useful for people's sleep. So many people often come up to me, they're like, Dr. Bruce, what's the sleep supplement that I need to take to improve my sleep quality? Blah, blah, blah. So I don't buy into that. Here's what I tell every single person to do: go to your doctor and get blood work done. Okay.
Mm.
I want to know if you have any deficiencies in iron, in vitamin D, in DHEA or your omegas, or magnesium, right? If
Mm.
you have any deficiencies in any of those areas, let's fix that first. And then let's
Mm.
see how this unit operates. Okay. I can assure you, you do not have a deficiency in ashwagandha. Okay. But you may have one in vitamin D. And if we fix
Yeah.
that, you don't need freaking ashwagandha. You just needed some vitamin
Yeah.
D. So I want
Exactly.
people to understand that, like, we need to be thoughtful. Like, there's no reason to just add stuff into the system. It just makes it more complicated, right? That's just
Mm.
not how sleep works, right? Is you don't have to find the supplement that's going to make everything better. You just need to work on the body and the level of
Yep.
consistency with the body. I mean, let's be fair. This unit has been working pretty damn well for hundreds,
Yep.
if not thousands of years, right? Like, why are we messing with it so much? Now,
That's
if we
it.
did right? If we did get into the Internet of Things of it all, and we were looking at gadgets and gizmos and things like that, I guess there's two things now that I would say that are on the market that I trust. One of them is called an Apollo. This is a wrist-worn haptic device where it actually vibrates and it sends a signal to your body. It actually helps turn on the parasympathetic nervous system. So for your
Hmm.
audience, do a quick biology lesson here. Inside your body, you have a central nervous system, okay? And it's made up of two sides, the sympathetic and the parasympathetic. The sympathetic is kind of the fight or flight. It's the thing that gets up and goes and gives you energy. The parasympathetic is the rest and digest. So this is the one that kind of calms you down. And what's interesting is Dr. David Rabin, who's a dear friend, but I have no affiliation with the company. He has this device and it sends this haptic signal and it vibrates and it clicks on your parasympathetic nervous system. Now you might be saying,
Hmm.
Michael, come on, how can a frequency, like a haptic frequency, change my biology? Well, let's be honest, we all experience the same thing every day. If you get caught in a traffic jam and you're pretty pissed off and you turn on the radio and it's your favorite song, what happens? You start bopping around and your whole mood changes, your
Yeah.
body language change, everything changes based on a frequency that's going in your ears. Okay. So it kind of starts to make sense if you had a frequency on your skin that's giving you these ideas from a concept called proprioception, which is you have all these nerve endings and mechanoreceptors on your skin that are looking for pieces of evidence to tell it when to relax and when to tense up. If you had something on there that makes you relax, guess what? It's going to turn on your parasympathetic nervous system. The
Interesting.
second device that I really like out there is called a Happy Ring. I know it's a crazy name, but it is the first ring tracker that does full FDA cleared for full nighttime polysomnography. So it's nuts, dude. I can stick this ring on you and I can actually do a full sleep study. No problem.
Wow.
And it's a grand total of $200. So like anybody can go out there. Like I think it's called Happy Sleep. Again, I have no affiliation with them. I just like their tech. It's a really interesting play. I'd say those are the kind of the two biggest things that I've seen that I think that those are things I would recommend to my patients.
Amazing. And then just one final piece on functional medicine seems to be exploding a lot, getting to the root cause, looking at hormones, looking at gut parasites, looking at mold, heavy metals. Does any of this have an impact on sleep with inflammation in the body?
Oh, absolutely. There's no question about it. But here's the problem is it's kind of hard to tell. We're kind of young in a lot of the research on this. The one area I think we can say a lot about is the microbiome and how sleep affects the microbiome. We know that the microbiome actually runs on a circadian rhythm. And so it has a very particular time when it's doing all the things that it's doing with all of your gut bacteria. Also, when you're sleep deprived, your microbiome is not happy and it's not functioning in the way that it should. So I think that's one area that people can understand more from in terms of how does sleep affect kind of one of those biohacky type of areas. Also, I'll tell you, sauna actually is great for sleep, but you don't want to do it right before bed. Maybe 3 hours before bed is where we see that what happens is when you get in there, there are these things called the somnogenic cytokines that get released due to sauna, get released due to exercise and things like that. And so while I love when you exercise and I sauna almost every day, you don't want to do it too close to bedtime because your core body temperature raises up too much and then it has a hard time falling. And remember, that is the key factor. And so what happens is your core body temperature rises. It hits a peak around 10:30, and then it drops. That drop is a signal to your brain to release melatonin. And if you ain't got no melatonin, you ain't sleeping. So your body has to get cooler. Now, some people have said, well, Michael, what if I do a cold plunge right before bed? I'm going to be honest with you, bro. Like cold plunges wake me up. Yeah,
That's heart rate going
up.
Whoa,
like that's a lot.
Yeah.
So I think it's going to be harder to do it after that. Although I have one patient who swears by it. So I think we don't have enough knowledge yet. I think it's a fun area of study. I mean, I know some of the biggest biohackers in the world, Dave Asprey, Ben Greenfield. I've met Brian Johnson, like all of these people that are kind of out there. And here's what I'll tell you. Every single one of them always comes to me and wants to improve their sleep. Every single one of them. Or they've identified that sleep is one of the biggest factors for them in their biohacking journey. And so sleep's one of those things you just can't ignore. Like if you want to be superhuman, I think you definitely want to get some super sleep.
Fascinating, Dr. Breus. If people want to learn more about you, where can they visit?
So I have a website. It's pretty easy to find, thesleepdoctor.com. We also have all the social properties. TikTok, believe it or not, I do a tremendous amount of videos on TikTok because it's a medium where there are a lot of young people on there and they don't know how to sleep. And so I want to try to educate them to do that. If you get a chance, check out chronoquiz.com. That's where you can learn what your chronotype is. And if for some reason you actually wanted to reach out to me, my personal website is yoursleepcoach.com.
Amazing. We'll put all that down in the show notes below. Thank you so much. I learned a ton today, and I know our audience did too. And
Absolutely.
all right, guys. Thank you. Sure. Go ahead.
Buy my book. Buy the book.
Yes. Sleep, eat, breathe.
Sleep, drink, breathe.
Drink, breathe. Sorry. Drink, breathe. Yeah, we'll definitely put that in the show notes below. That sounds like a must read, as well as all your other ones. It's a lot of good information. So thank you once again. And thank you everybody for listening today. If you'd like to learn more about how to become superhuman and get our free superhuman guide, visit getsuperhuman.io. Until next time.
Sweet dreams.
Sweet dreams.